We want to thank our sponsors this morning, the Gilbert family. Pulling it up, apologize. Here we go. Michael Gilbert and family, in memory of Michael's beloved father, Yitzchak ben Moshe, Zichron Livracha, and grandfather, Shalom ben Yisrael Halevi, Zichron Livracha. That's a good name. It's a good name. Yeah, I know. It's a good name. I'm Shalom Yisrael, so we're connected. We're connected. In commemoration of their yard site, we thank you. We acknowledge our chevra that comes from next door, from White Plains, each and every week to learn with us. A big yesher koach, and we'll learn the aliyas, neshamos of your loved ones. Okay, we're going to see a piece or two or three, depending how we do it. About Matan Torah, right? Obviously, there's so much to bite into. There's so much to get involved in when it comes to dealing with Matan Torah and Parshas Yisrael. So we're going to start with this piece. You see, it's numbered on the top, page 1. V'asa etchem al kanfei nesharim v'avi etchem elai. I'll bring you on the wings of eagles, and I'll take you to me. Or I did do it, right? Already, depending on how you look at it. Obviously, it's talking about going to Israel on an airplane. I mean, it's like it's hard not to see that connection in terms of what on a futuristic way what a Navi would be talking about. But it talks about how HaKadosh Baruch Hu protected us, and really the Torah's protective qualities. So says the Kli Yakar. Here's Kirkan Shalosh Madrego Zolam Alamizo. So here it mentions 3 different levels. Mitchila Amar Va'asa Etchem Al Kanfei Nesharim. First it says, I'll take you on wings of eagles. V'zeu Kasher Yisah Omein Etayoneg. And that is compared to, or corresponds to, how an omein, how someone, a nursing mother, is nursing the baby. And in that way, Hashem is like the father, or like a mother, right? Like a parent. Yisrael b'madregas haben, and the Jewish people are like the child, right? They're being like sort of pulled along. They're being nurtured and nourished by the parent. And then it says, and I'll take you to me. Mashma shetiyu shavim li. The Aviatchem Elai, right, where you're getting to a space where the child is equal to the parent. Perhaps as a child reaches a young adulthood, right, or even adulthood, and you're kind of on a more equal footing. They become like siblings, right? That you're similar to each other. You could talk to each other, confide in each other. Right? Everyone has their own perspective on life, their own sense of wisdom, and you appreciate that. And then it says, right afterwards, not quoted here, and you'll be a mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh. You'll be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Right? That's the status of the Jewish people as a leader amongst world nations. We see it today, obviously. Kiviyachol melachim li. But this is where it gets interesting. The Kli Yakar says it's as if to say, you're like kings to me, you're like leaders or officials to me, meaning that God follows the orders of the Jewish people. As it says, the righteous rules, the righteous has a leadership role through his or her fear of God. So he quotes a medrash that the Rambam brings in Chaysar. It says as follows: Shal Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai es Rabbi Lazar bar Yossi. Rabbi Shimon Yochai es Rabbi Lazar. Efshar sheshamata me'avicha mahu ba'atara she'itra lo imo. What does it mean when it in Shir Shirim, when it talks about, and they say that it's a reference to the Sinai experience, ba'atara she'itra lo imo. What does it mean when it says the crown that your mother gave you? Or your parent gave you. Amar lo, mashal amad daradoma. What is this compared to? L'melech sha'ayta lo bat yechida. It's compared to a king who had one daughter. Okay? And and he loved her very much, right? His princess, beautiful, literally. Umitchila kra biti, and he's my daughter. He calls her my daughter. Now it's very nice, starts out nice, and it gets a little bit weird. Listen to this. Lo zaz mechabava achekra achoti. And he doesn't stop, he doesn't leave from there until ultimately, after several years, he calls her my sister. Now, by the way, the sister concept is, right, imra amor lechachma achotiat. Say to wisdom, you are my sister. It means that there's, right, she's risen in her stature, and she has a certain level of understanding and wisdom. So he calls her my sister. Lo zaz mechabava ad shekra imi. And eventually, he ends up calling her my mother, right, or my parent. Kach HaKadosh Baruch Hu mechabevet Yisrael. So the Kli Yakar looks at this matter. He's like, this is really odd. This parable is odd. What's it talking about? He says that's how the Jewish God values the Jewish people. Right? It's an interesting thing, right? Usually we think it's the Jewish people are looking up to God. No. This is God valuing the Jewish people. It's almost similar to the idea how after the sin of the golden calf in Parshas Kitisa, where Moshe asked to see Hashem's face. What does Hashem say? You can't see my face. I'll show you my back. And what does Moshe see? Is at the foot of Har Sinai in the cleft of the rock. What does Moshe see? The back of God's tefillin. He sees the back knot of the neck of God's tefillin. What is it? And they say, tefillin, God wears tefillin. The Gemara says, how could that be? And the Gemara says, well, what does it say in God's tefillin? In our tefillin it says, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Right? There's, God is the ultimate God. There's no God like God. And what does it say in God's tefillin? Mika Amcha Yisrael Goyechad Ba'aretz. Right? It's God who idolizes on some level or idealizes the Jewish people. Okay? That's what's happening. So, Kachamar Kadosh Baruch Hu Mechabes Yisrael V'kara Otam Biti. And he calls them my daughter, Shimi Bat Uri'i. Lo Zaz, next page, Mechabavan Achukra Achoti. And eventually, God calls the Jewish people my sister. Shenemar Pitchili Achoti Rayati. Right, the Shweki song. Pitchili, right? Achoti Rayati. Why would he call his beloved, right, his sister? Again, the idea being that has to do with something with wisdom and being on an equal plane. Lozaz mechabban achakraimi, and eventually he calls them my mother. Shenemar hakshuva elai ami ule umi, as it says, listen to me, my nation. Ule umi, kind of a play on words. Leimi ksiv, right? It says leimi. Leumi means my people, right? Ukafia nira. So says the Kli Yakar. Shemedrash zeh lo amar seder madregos. Ki mitchila bat ve'achar kach hosif l'chabva ukra achoti ve'hosafa zo geiron hi. Ki b'li safik sheyoser ha'adam mechabev et bito me'achoto. Yaakov's like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Who does a parent, hold in, not greater esteem, but who does a parent love more? The sister or his daughter, right? Or his child, right? It's obviously going to be your child. So how could that be that, you're going up levels? You're not. Ubeli safik shemedrash zeh medaber b'madregos hamemshala sheyesh lezeh al zeh. Ki ha'av moshel al abat v'chein ha'im aval ach ve'achot shavin hema. Right? He's saying maybe it has more to do with sort of in whose dominion a person is, right? A child is in the dominion of a parent, right, of the father, right, and vice versa for the mother, to a child, right? Aval ach ve'achot shavin hema. But siblings are on the same plane. Kach mitchila kara kadosh baruch hu Yisrael bat mitzad ahavato liYisrael. Therefore, initially, God calls the Jewish people his daughter because of the love he has for the Jewish people. Ve'ach lo yitbarach hamlucha limshol al Yisrael k'memshelas ha'av al bito, right? And God, kind of rules over us. And God, we're looking up and obviously in reverence to God. V'zeh haya b'yimei Abraham. And he's like, and this is corresponding to the days of Abraham. Ki pasuk shimi bat uri'i nidrash al Abraham. Right? That's the way things were in Abraham's time. V'zuya madrega ha'amura kan rishona v'asa etchem al kanfei nisharim. And that's what it's talking about when it says, I'm going to take you on the wings of eagles. And the siyazo, hika asher yisa umenet hayonik. What does God do? God coddles us, and he protects us, and he takes us. And that's what happened with the avos, right? In the times of Abraham, it was sort of starting. The relationship was starting, and we needed God to really guide the way. But then it goes higher. Then there's a higher level. Likro tamachoti, where God calls the Jewish people my sister. Lomar sheim shavim elav yitbarach, where God says to the Jewish people, you guys are, we're on the same plane. You're like my equals. There's equality. V'yishva kadosh baruch hu kvodu mora'o yitbarach lichvodam, and the honor due to God becomes similar to the honor due to the people. Uka amra v'seinu zal she'atzadikim domim ki'ilu na'asu shutafim lamakom baruch hu, where the righteous become literally like partners in creation, partners with God. When does that happen? V'zeh haya b'yemei Yitzchak. This was in the time of Yitzchak. She'amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, gur ba'aretz hazot ve'ayeh imcha. Right? Because God says, stay in this land, and I'll be with you. Hainu b'shavelecha. We're going to be like brothers. We're like brothers. We like bros, right? We're going to be in this together. Ki nitosef lo zechuto al zechut Abraham aviv, al kein lo ne'amar l'shon be'eheyeh imcha le'Abraham kamo liYitzchak. God doesn't say that to Abraham, right? Yitzchak's on a higher level. Now, just to get a little bit deeper here, why Yitzchak? Well, in Yitzchak's life, obviously, we know the defining moment, right, episode of Yitzchak's life is Akedas Yitzchak. What does that show, right? In the ancient world, Rabbi Sachs talks about this a lot, right? In the ancient world, the relationship of God or the gods to man, to humanity, was very much, right, I'm in control, right? I'm in control. I can do with you as I wish, and you're subject to whatever, fate I have in store for you. And that's it, right? And if I choose to bring a hurricane, I'll bring a hurricane, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and, you're stuck. You're stuck. And especially when it comes to who you are, well, how you're born matters as well. Oh, you're a child? Oh, you're the firstborn? Oh, well, guess what? Sorry. Usually firstborns, if things are going badly, in the world or for the family or for the community, they're going to sacrifice you. Because you don't have value. You're just a child. You're nothing. What happens? Comes God and says, sacrifice, kachna pincha tichidcha, asher havtes Yitzchak, and bring him up on the mountain, and you're going to lift up the knife, and then what's going to happen? I'm going to say stop. Why? Because I'm going to say those days, that's what I'm saying to the world is those days are over. No more, right? It's not that there's a God and he's going to, make you do these terrible things. It's the opposite, right? You're partners with creation. You're partners in God with creation, right? Where literally there's a God-man partnership, right? And Hashem says, yeah, we're in this together. We're in this together. We're going to, there are things happening you don't understand. There are things happening that are out of control. You're right. You're not God. However, you can effectuate change in this world. You're not subject to fate. As Rav Soloveitchik says, you can create your own destiny, right? You can argue with me. You can get in there, right? And you can say, no, this is not okay. And by the way, that's why Yitzchak in the Gemara and Shabbos, where there's this whole story about the end of days comes and all of the different avos are trying to advocate for the Jewish people, and God doesn't listen to any of them except for one, except for Yitzchak. Yitzchak comes and Yitzchak is able to say, hey God, remember what happened? Look what happened to me. It's not like, oh, remember what happened to me, you caused me trauma. It's not that. It's not that. It's, you remember the lesson of what happened to me, which was we're partners in this, right? We're moving together. We're moving forward together, okay? And that's the pshat. And that's why he says now they're, on the level of brothers. Now that would be enough. And where are we going? What's the next level? The next level is humanity ruling over God. This is a Kli Yakar. It's not me talking, which is wild. But this is, again, the Chiddush of Judaism, okay? And then it says, right? You're going to be with me together. That was a second madrega. And then Yaakov comes, right? And you have the 3-ply cord, the strength of believing in God and having a covenantal relationship with God in the world. God took it even higher. Likro to aim. where God calls the Jewish people, my mother, my parent, right? Where you have a dominion over the daughter. So too, a righteous person can make certain demands of God, right? That's what Moshe did, right? God said, I'm going to kill everyone, I'm going to destroy everyone. What does Moshe say? Not on my watch. Right? Erase me from your book. Right? Yaakov, what did Yaakov do? Rabbi Rubenstein Zichron Baruch used to talk about this, and he was a Yaakov, and you think about this a lot. Yaakov, right, made a deal with God. Right? Yaakov said, if you take care of me and I can return to this place and you hook me up and you make sure I have food to eat and clothing to wear and so on, I'll come and I'll dedicate my life to you. I'll bring make a mizbeach, I'll give you meiser, right? Who's God? Who are we to bargain with God? But that's the point, right? No, a tzaddik goes there, v'akadosh baruch hu mekayim, right? Tzaddik can make a decree and God will have to fulfill that decree, right? Because of the belief. And that's why it says, you've sarita Elohim. We always translate it as you've struggled with God, right? Yisrael, you struggled with God. Sarita Elohim actually doesn't mean to struggle. What does it mean? Asar. You're a commander. You're the commanding officer over God. You're the general. You're the chief of staff over God, right? Which is wild. But that's what it says. And you're able to do it. Even though God said, I'll be with you, right? Like we'll be brothers. Irrespective of that, afterwards, Yaakov transcended to this higher level, Yasar El Vayuchal, where he rules or prevails over God. V'zeu shamar Kadosh Baruch Hu kra liYaakov El Ratzu lomar Moshe lalav kiviyachol v'zeu shnemar v'atem ti'ilim mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh melachim li kiviyachol. When it says you'll be a kingdom of priests, not just a kingdom of priests amongst the nations, a kingdom of priests can be literally the king over me. Ki ani gozer gzeira v'at tzadik mevatla, because I can make a decree. And the righteous person can daven, and we believe in tefillah, and we see, Baruch Hashem, our tefillos being mikuyam, as difficult as it is to see, right? And and as hard as it has been to go through each week, every week. But you know what? We've been davening for this for 14 months. We've been davening for this 15 months, and it's happening. People are coming out. Every person, every life, and we'll get to that soon on another piece. V'zachu l'mala zo mitzad yosam b'nei Yisrael, k'mo shematchil la'inyan, kotam al beit Yaakov tagad b'nei Yisrael v'gomer, and v'nuchal l'farish pasuk v'atem ti'ilim memlechas kohanim malachim al kohanim, ki al yidei kabbalas haTorah yesh l'lamdei Yisron al kohanim, ki afilu mamzot ha'mechacham kol mechoin gadol ha'ma'aretz. He says that, on the one hand, we can be officials, we can lord over God himself by davening, by trying to change the fate and creating a new destiny. And he says also, by the way, understand, even if you take it in its more traditional sense, he's saying that you could be a king over a Kohen, meaning a Kohen obviously has a higher degree of sanctity, but if you're through Torah, right, through engaging in Torah, through living that kind of life, you could actually achieve more, right? It's the difference between a meritocracy and an aristocracy, right? You may be born a Kohen, but you got to step up and you got to show me the goods, right? You have to do something with it. It's like what the Kutzker Rebbe said, that that someone told him, asked him about yichus. They go, oh, I have great yichus. I come and he goes, you know what yichus is? He says yichus is like a bunch of zeros. A lot of zeros. If at the end of that zero you have a 1, that means something. It could be a million, could be 10 million, could be a billion, right? But if at the end of all those zeros you have another 0, you know what it means for you? 0, right? You're nothing, you're nobody, right? It matters what you do, how you do. Okay, let's go weiter. We're going to see one more quick piece. So we're gonna look at bottom of page 4. Lo tirtach, lo tinaf. Okay, we're moving to Aser Dibros. Okay, so we're on the second half already. Aser Dibros, bottom left of page 4, and we're about to flip in a second. So, achar shehishlim chamisha dibro shebein adam la'makam baruch hu, he's going to connect them chamisha dibro shebein adam l'chaveru. Right, so we know, right, you have the two sides of this. The dibros, first side is bein adam l'makam, between us and Hashem. Second side, bein adam l'chaver, between, interpersonal relationships, right? So, it talks about moral code. And it says you can't murder, right? Kederech shenizkaru, we're flipping now. The mechilta echayu mekablim zelu madzeva adimyonos bahem, ki ma she'amru lo tirtzach k'neged anochi. So the way it worked was, you had the dibros lined up, right? You have the first of the Aseret dibros on the one side is Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I'm Hashem your God, and then the next one, right, on the other side, the top is Lo Tirtzach, and they line up, right? The next one is Lo Yeh Lecha Elohim Achirim, and then it's Lo Tinaf, right? You shall not commit adultery. But there's a simple, easy connection there, right? You're cheating on God, so to speak, right? That's the idea, right? That would be the connection of not serving other gods. You're cheating on God. What about Lo Tirtzach and Anochi Hashem? So look at what he says. He says, why? Ki kol mi sheshofech damim ki ilu mima'ed atzelem v'hadmus. Because if a person murders, you're diminishing the image of God in that person, right? You're saying it doesn't exist. Right, this is from Noach, right? About if you murder, like there's the image of God there, like so there's something that you're denying the existence of God. And he says, so when a person kills, what essentially you're saying is like you're denying the divine image, the divine quality, the divine worth, value of that individual, of that person. And the same thing with, God forbid, someone who takes their own life, right? And obviously, taking out the mental health, aspects of it, but that would be the reason why one shouldn't take their own life. This is what it means. What does it mean? What does the image mean? He says that when God appears to us in stories in the Torah, whether it's Midrashim or whether it's in the Torah itself, how does he appear to us? He appears to us in the image, in a human image. Even though God doesn't have a human image, right? And he's being clear. This is a rabbi who's living in Christian Europe, and he's being very clear. We don't believe that God has a human image. And you see the word tselem. What do we call a cross? Or that? What do you call a crucifix? A tselem, right? They call him a tselem, right? That's what you call it, right? That's the idea, right? Like we don't believe in that, but he says. But when we see images of God, or it's mentioned in the Torah or in Nevi'im, it mentions it like that God appears as a human being. In Yechezkel, demut kamare adam. Right, you see God's chariot, and it says that there is the image of the appearance of a person. Obviously, it wasn't a person, but it was the image of a person, right? It was a human image. So too, the Medrash says that God looked like a warrior at the sea. And on Har Sinai, you see like an image of God as an elderly grandparent, type figure. And therefore, you have to give respect due to that image, right? So the image, the human image, for some reason, bears a certain value, an intrinsic value. Why? Because that's the image that we have of God, right? That's right. We don't say that God looks like some sort of other thing, right? It doesn't look like a lizard or a dragon. It looks like it's a human image. And if someone kills, someone murders, what you're doing is you're diminishing that image. And it's counterintuitive what he says right now. He says, why? Why are you diminishing the image? Because if a person murders, you're causing God to say, I don't want to look like that anymore. I don't want to look like that image. Look what you're doing. You're a murderer. You're killing people. You're evil. I don't want to I don't want to look like you. I don't even want you to think of me in those terms because of what you're doing. When you think of like the 10/7 terrorists and Hamas, to this day, they're they say, okay, when you say they're animals, it's an insult to animals, right? They were murdering dogs also, right? When you say they're evil people, like, are they like really like you say they're monsters? Like, what are they, right? They can't, because what they're doing is they're denigrating the value of humanity, and God looks at them and says, I don't want to be associated with these people, with this. Me'achashu bazui ala briot. Right? The aroa hanirtzach, because aroa hanirtzach hu dugmat kikilat Elohim talui, and that's why the ein la'arich od mizeh, and that's why, like, in Judaism, right, we believe especially, right, who is such heroes after October 7th? Zaka. And by the way, Zaka now is their training. I saw something, it was like an AIPAC email or something, where Zaka is doing a training session to sheriffs here in America of how to deal with, chas v'shalom, mass casualty incidents, and, giving kavod, proper respect due, and so on. They're literally running like, congressional committees or whatever, meeting with, various law enforcement officials here in America. Why? Because that's the reason why, even looking at a dead human body, a corpse, we don't have, open caskets, things like that, because that's bazui, right? It's not respectful to the human form, because that human form is kind of not borrowed by God, but we use it as euphemistically, right? To as a certain picture, right? God as the zaken at Sinai. V'li nireh lomar lakach vad dibur lo tirtzach keneged anochi lefi sheYaakov ve'Esav asu chaluka b'neihem. And he says, here's the thing. Yaakov and Esav, right? So we're going back to so now we're at Yaakov now, right? We start with Abraham, right? Who God, kind of moved along and kind of took care of until we got to Yitzchak, who now they're like on an equal footing, until we got to Yaakov, who's like highest level. And he says, what's lo tirtzach and anochi? It's Yaakov is anochi, and lo tirtzach is Esav. Okay? And he says, Lefisha Yaakov ve'Esav asu chaluka b'neihem, they made a division between them. Ki Yaakov bachar lo yah lechelko, because what did Yaakov choose? Who did Yaakov choose? He chose God. V'Hashem menach chelko. Ve'Esav bachar lo umanut al charbecha tichyeh. And Esav chose murder. He chose to live by his sword. V'alkein kafar ba'ikar. And therefore, he's heretical. He denies the validity, the essential nature of God. Right? We have lama zeli b'chora. Why do I need the firstborn? That's Esav when he spurns the firstborn. And zekeli ve'anvehu. Very similar. Where is zekeli ve'anvehu? From Kiryas Yam, from Az Yashir, from last week. This is God? No. I don't need God. Lama zeli, zekeli. No, I'm out. And I think what this speaks to is, right, someone who chooses this path, a murderous path, right? And they say, doing it for God, Allahu Akbar, and all that mishigas. No, it's evil. It's not mishigas. But guess what? You're denying the validity of God by definition. Right? What you're doing is literally degrading the level. We were talking about living, a loftier, and growing, right, and taking our humanity and pushing it forward and elevating it, right, on a level with God, even surpassing God. This goes down to the lowest level, even further, right? Therefore, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God, went to the house of Jacob. In the same way, God is saying, hey, don't fall into the trap. Don't be like them, right? This goes to why can't we just do whatever? No, because we don't do whatever as the army of the Jewish people, as the idea. We're not them. We're not going to be like them. And we're not going to fall prey to that, right? We believe in a God. They believe in something that one can't even understand. And we should never be able to understand it. This brings you to heresy. And it was because of thou shalt not murder, as the Medrash says, the Bnei Esav threw out the entire Torah. They said, no, I'm out. I don't want this. No, I need this. I need murder. You could think you're religious. But if your religion calls for wanton murder, even if you think it is justified for whatever reason, territorial or otherwise, it's not. It's not. You're denying God, right? And you're taking the humanity out of the world. You're saying, God is saying, I don't want to be a part of you. And that's why, Esav literally, like, if there's murder, there's nothing, right? It knocks out everything. These are ancient words that we need to live by, that our job literally is to keep going, to keep elevating, to feel protected and preserved by God, to be able to speak to God and feel in an equal partnership with Hashem, and ultimately to say to Hashem, Genig, enough, the Jewish people have suffered enough, we've had enough, we need to move forward, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should listen. Why? Because of who we're going up against. It's the Anochi people. We stand up with a banner of Anochi Hashem Elokecha over our heads versus Lo Tirtzach people, a nation that has no concern for human life, and therefore, irrespective of what they say they believe, has no concern for literally the dominion of God in this world, in the zechus of Hashem, of His Torah. We should overcome and see a geula shalema for all of the hostages, for all the IDF soldiers, and Mashiach b'mher b'yameinu. Amen. Shkoyach. Rabbi Chanan Mekashim Tzikadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakos says Yisrael Lefichach Hibram Ter Mitzvah Shnemar Adonai Chafetz Man Tzidko Yad Ter V'Yader Kadosh Ter Rabbanan. Amen.